Hello, hello, dear beloveds. It is my absolute privilege to be here for day one of the 17 days, it can hardly come out of my mouth, of sacred archetypes. And we are going to spend the next 17 days, if you choose to do so, on the weekdays, hanging out together, getting to know both the sacred and the shadow archetypes as I share them in the training of the third level. So this is not all the archetypes that exist on the planet, not by any means, but they are the archetypes that really matter to the work of the intuitive guide and the fear huntress. And there's a reason for that. These are the archetypes that in my, I guess, many years of working with clients, I was able to see the patterns of archetypes that would come up again and again and again, particularly working with spiritual people or those on the path. And so we're going to be looking at the 13 sacred feminine archetypes that we work with in the method process. And we're also going to be looking at the 4 shadow archetypes that come from the work of Caroline Myss and are also included in the work of the intuitive guide. Now, even though we're talking about sacred and shadow, there's actually no judgment there. There's not good and bad. There is simply an acknowledgement of the holism of our beingness and the requirement of us to become intimate with all aspects of self, which includes our shadow side. And in fact, we never evolve beyond the shadow archetypes. We're never like fixed or solved. In fact, that would be sort of like to say, I cut off my arm and I'm somehow more whole than I was before. It's the opposite of that. The shadows have such a profound function and they have a light form, and that's the purpose of our work, is to access them within balance. So like all things, they crave homeostasis or balance, and it's our job to attain that understanding through being willing to get down and dirty with them, not to avoid them, not to overcome them. They're not preventing our sacredness. They are simply an aspect of our sacredness. Remembering that when we put down judgment, that is where we find our holiness, and it's only by moving beyond judgment of good or bad that we do that. We're also working with the Sacred 13, and these, as I say, these are not the full gamut of archetypes that exist in the known and unknown universes, but they are the ones that I have curated. So it's a list that I've curated of archetypal patterns that I have seen come up so often in the work that I do in my one-to-one work, that I am aware that these ones are usually going to show up when I sit with a client or with a student, a group of students, and therefore they get most of my attention. And of course, if you have been hanging out with me, you'll know that Christy Jameson has created a beautiful visual representation of these archetypes. I'll be working with these today as I share, well, over the next 17 days. We don't have the shadows in here. Maybe that will be our next step, Christy. But we'll be working with these sacred feminine archetypes, and I'll share a link if you're interested in getting your own pack as well. It's not necessary. We work with these cards in a very unique way. There's nothing, they're not oracle cards. They're not predicting anybody's future. They simply have a very brief, channeled message that I have added to Christy's beautiful image. Actually, we did it the other way around. I gave her the words and she created the images. And they're really an invitation to go within. And that's where I just want to start briefly today. Before we jump into who is showing up today and who showed up today, I thought, what will I do? How will I decide what order we do this in? And I woke up this morning and she was there and she told me exactly who we were working with today. And we're working with her in a very particular kind of way. So a very particular face of this archetype. So I'm excited to share it with you. But I just want to share with you a little bit about what happens when I teach the third level priestess mystic leaders to channel archetypes. And I, want to be very clear on what I'm doing in that, because it's certainly nothing to do with going outside of us. Guess what? Rufus wants to go out because I went live. Yeah, he knows. He knows. That's Rufus, my giant dog. Needs to go outside. Go on. It is inevitable. It is inevitable. If Mama goes live, Rufus wants to go outside. So when we access archetypal energy, and an archetype is a pattern of energy that repeats so often that we can recognize it universally. So we know there are many, many archetypes, many hundreds of archetypes, but the idea of accessing archetypal energy in terms of receiving guidance from it is actually the opposite of going out. It's going within. So what we're doing when we train as intuitive guides, as sphere huntresses, is that we're going within to the universe within, the infinite consciousness within us, to find that part of our consciousness that is the maiden or the mother or the crone. And we're doing that on behalf of our clients. So we're actually accessing that information from that unified field that contains everything on behalf of our client, because that information is for them. So it's very opposite to how we're often taught about this idea of channeling, that somehow there's this, maybe this big council sitting up in the sky somewhere that are all just waiting for us to tap into them, and then we download some information from something outside of us. And that's often a misnomer that's used, is this idea of my guides are out there somewhere, or these big kind of, you know, brotherhood of light, or whatever language you've been taught, is somehow separate from you. The first law, the law of mentalism, states all is one. So how could I go outside of me, if I am one, to access anything? It's simply not possible. So we're overcoming the belief in separation when we channel and access the archetypal energy and access its wisdom. And it may simply be that on that day or week or month, you're creating something that requires more of the warrior energy. And so you draw, or that warrior energy comes to you. You wake up one morning, you have a dream about her, or you see her in meditation, and you realize that you're being guided by the warrior. And that warrior energy is then going to give you her energetic scaffold to help you create whatever it is that you're bringing into reality. And that may come in the form of a felt sense, or words, or images, or dreams, or ideas, or downloads, or inspirations, whatever way you want to describe it. But it's all coming from within, because you are the cosmos. And I really want to get that very clear, that there is nothing outside of us. And we are in the process of learning to channeling that great wisdom from within us. So even when people say, I channel Jesus, or I channel Mother Mary, or I channel this, or I, you know, whatever ways you work with archetypal energy, and all guides are archetypal energy, you are simply accessing that great wisdom from within yourself. And to me, this is flipping everything on its head, and it's vital information that we do that, because otherwise we're buying into the idea that someone out there has more access to something than I do. I'm just gonna have some tea. And I need them to access that for me and give me, you know, their special privileged relationship to that energy or entity that I can't access on my own. You know, it's dangerous. It's the shadow side of channeling. It's the shadow side of our work. Now, there are some people whose lives are so congruent, and they're such a clear vessel that they're able to receive from within. It's really hard to get past these ideas of duality, but to receive from within that energy far more efficaciously and gracefully than someone else. But it's simply a matter of time. If that's a skill you want, you just practice, practice, practice. And that's what I teach in the third level, is that it doesn't matter how robust your intuition is, you can always get better. And no one has intuition more than or less than anybody else. It's simply a decision. Am I going to become a masterful intuitive, or am I happy just going with whatever I have right now? It's the same as if we want to become a masterful yogi, or you know, an amazing speaker of French, or great at maths. We would have to apply ourselves with devotion. And when it comes to our work as intuitive guides, it also requires a level of congruence between your actions and your faith. Am I a living demonstration of what I believe, or am I trying to trick God? And it's a really interesting thing, because that requires a great deal of personal responsibility, and that's what people often don't want. So it's easier to say, I'll just go and sit at the feet of that teacher who can channel Jesus for me, because then I don't have to become personally responsible for becoming a clear enough vessel to be able to access that archetypal energy easily for myself. So it's really a choice. Do I want to go to a place where I become masterful in my capacity to attune to an archetype which might have a different vibration to where I'm currently sitting? And that's it. You know, as Tesla told us, it's teaching ourselves to think in the language of energy, vibration, and frequency. It is simply that there's certain archetypes we might identify with particular historical figures or angels or whatever it is, whose frequency is so high and light that for us in our ordinary running around, eating the chips, yelling at our kids, driving in traffic, whatever it is, energy field, it might be just really, really difficult to find that frequency. So we have to prepare ourselves, and we prepare ourselves not just on the day, but every damn day, every damn day. And the preparation is to meet our fear and to become a clear vessel, because fear is like a knot in your subtle body, and it prevents the clear flow of that archetypal energy within and without. We have to stop thinking in those terms, but there's a language, you know, there's an image I can use for you. If you think about yourself as the filter that's receiving infinite consciousness, which paradoxically you are also all of, you're receiving yourself into yourself, then you are, you know, whenever there's fear in your subtle body, that's a block, an impediment to receiving that free flow of life force, that archetypal energy. There's a lot in there, and I guarantee that even if you spent your life thinking about it, it would not necessarily become clear. It's wisdom that can only be received with the heart. And we must be willing to bow to our heart's intuitive intelligence. And that also takes a deep process. That's why my priestess mystic leaders spend a year with me to become the deeply congruent beings that can access this archetypal energy with most ease and increase their power to serve, and, you know, increase the amount of light they bring to the world and the easing of suffering. And that is ultimately the work of the intuitive guide, is to be the cause of the end of suffering for themselves and others. And, you know, that's why I think archetypes matter so much, because we're being reminded that these great masters, these great angels, these great teachers, these great energies that we so admire are actually all us. We are Jesus, we are Mary. We never were anything else, and it's oneness, it's unity consciousness in action. It is the opposite of separation and dualism. So who are we speaking with today? On that note, we have the Mother. And the Mother has arrived in a very particular form today. As I said, in my bed this morning before I rose, she appeared to my consciousness as the Madonna. And so it is Mother Mary that we are communing with today. And I feel greatly privileged, deeply humbled that our 17 Days of Archetypes is kicking off with Mother Mary. So I'm just going to tune into that, remembering that all I'm doing is Mother Mary is an aspect of self, because all is one. How could I not be Mother Mary? If all is one and I am one with all, then I am that. So the Madonna is here in this energy of the Divine Mother, the Cosmic Mother. And we're just going to close our eyes now. If you're safe to do so, you're very welcome to join me in that, and deepen your breath. If you can't close your eyes, or you'd prefer not to, you can just gently rest your gaze on a point in front of you, and we're withdrawing our attention. We're withdrawing our attention from the superficial world, because this is the activation of spiritual sight, symbolic sight, and we're not in the gross material plane. We're going within to that subtle realm, that in world within the world. And we're just allowing ourselves, with extended breath and eyes closed, to move out of that high beta brainwave state and move out of the fight or flight response. So our beloved Madonna, Mother Mary, is here to show us an image of the planet at this time, and her as a guiding, like a ship, a spacecraft, if you like, that her energy is kind of holding the planet and steering it in a particular direction. It's almost like we're being moved through the cosmos, even though that isn't literally happening, by her guidance, by her compassion. And that compassionate love is so fiercely holding the entire planet at this point of massive transformation for all human consciousness that we simply cannot fail. That is the core of her offer here today. What she is inviting us to recognize is that we are all the midwives of that new consciousness that is birthing. And if we think of her as the mother, it's our actions in the world right now that will facilitate that birth that is occurring of consciousness to a higher level, to a higher frequency. Her energy is so fierce, and she will hold herself here wrapped around us, guiding us, steering us like, almost like the tugboat taking the giant ship safely into the harbor. She is guiding us so fiercely. We can't go astray, but the efficaciousness of our awakening can be determined by the level of compassion that we bring to the world right now. And what is compassion? Compassion is fierce love. It is, I am not afraid for you. So it's not sympathy. It's not even empathy. It's not holding space for someone's littleness. It's an invitation for you to see as Mother Mary sees, to see another through the perfection that is their truth. Not to see their littleness, their brokenness, their humanness, but to hold space for their divinity, to hold space for their true gloriousness, just as she holds space for us. That compassion means that I am not afraid for you. It doesn't matter what you've lived or what has happened to you. You are no less holy and whole as a result of your lived experience. You cannot make God love you less. You cannot be adored less. You are as holy as the moment you were born, and all of your lifetimes are the same. There's no separation from that truth. That is the mother's love. The mother is able to see what others cannot see. They see beyond the trouble and the brokenness and the limits to the heart. They see with their fierceness, their fierce love. Another image that comes to mind here is Durga. And Durga is from the Hindu mythology, the fierce mother who rides the lion or the tiger, depending on the story that you read. And she's a warrior, and her energy is so intense and so devoted to righteous love. Mother Mary is often associated with this kind of gentleness, this almost passivity. And in fact, she is fierce. Her love is fierce. Her role in our awakening consciousness as an archetypal energy pattern, not a historical figure, not a biblical man-made figure, but as an archetypal energy of consciousness that is within each of us. Her seeds of consciousness are within each of us. And therefore, she's not afraid for us because her consciousness resides within us. And within us, we have the capacity, all of us, to activate compassion. And what is that in action? It means to forgive quickly. It doesn't mean that you let yourself stay in situations where you will be harmed. You don't be naive, but you don't withhold love from the world just because someone did something wrong to you once, or you feel that you don't deserve love because you did something to someone once. Withholding love right now is what will extend our suffering. So to find that compassion, that fierce love in you right now, to forgive readily. To forgive readily. And if I had the beautiful Christy Jameson here with me right now, the teacher of A Course in Miracles and postgraduate priestess, she would say, true forgiveness according to A Course in Miracles is that the events never happened. There is nothing to forgive because everything that we're perceiving through human sight is actually so limited that we are believing lies. The very truth of it is that everything is serving our awakening, and everything that ever has been and ever will be is in service to the greater good. It can be very hard from our human sight to see that, and that's why we must learn to cultivate our spiritual sight, our symbolic sight. That's why I take women into a year-long journey with me to help them understand how to cultivate both the 3D and the 5D gaze at the same time, because if we're only perceiving with human sight, we're seeing like 5% of truth, and we're not seeing any truth at all. Actually, we're seeing all illusion. Truth exists at that level of pure consciousness, that level of symbolic sight. And the way that we do this is like there are planes or dimensions of reality, and we're sort of operating in our ordinary waking state at the most dense and kind of least interesting level of reality, and we're seeing a dense concretized world, and it's heavy, and the things that happen in it are heavy. But when we learn to elevate our sight and we can actually operate from those higher dimensions, those multidimensional perceptions of reality, we see the deeper meaning. Life stops being sort of unilateral and it becomes multidimensional. It's very hard to explain, but when you see it through symbolic sight, you would see it almost like a 3D fractal. I wish I could show it to you, but it's something that we learn to access through devotion and commitment. And that's really, it begins with compassion, and compassion comes from forgiveness. I'm not holding the poison, as Marianne Williamson says, drinking it and hoping the other person will die. I'm willing now to recognize that unforgiveness causes bitterness, and that bitterness is what has allowed us as a human collective to arrive at this moment. So our mother is here now to invite us to put down our fear, really our fear of lack, Our fear that there is not enough love to go around, so we have to be stingy with it. We have to withhold it only to those we gave birth to, or those we married, or those that we've chosen to be our special closest friends, and actually to pour that love out into the world with gay abandon, and to really see that there is, the more we give of that love freely, the more love we will receive, because giving is receiving. It is the law. And we've got such a stinginess around giving love. We're so afraid to give even a compliment. We're so afraid that that means that somehow we'll miss out on something, or that there's something that, you know, we can only hand it out in small amounts. And that lack mentality, it causes all our suffering. It causes our lack of abundance. It causes our, you know, lack of love in our interpersonal relationships. It causes our lack of enthusiasm for all of the hard jobs we have to do, like homeschooling our children. But when we let that Madonna, Mother Mary energy in, that fierce compassion, we will find it's like a lubricant for the soul, and everything we need will come to us with ease and grace, and it will pour out of us into the world. And that aridness, that stinginess, that bitterness that is so steeped in people's consciousness, that you know, right to take while another goes without, that mentality is what is coming to an end if we choose to be the midwives of what the Great Mother is holding around us right now. Thank you. I am so grateful. I'm so grateful to this beautiful image from Christy, to the Madonna for showing herself to me this morning. And I'll just read you the words on the back of this card to complete our time together today, day 1 of our 17-day adventure with the sacred and the shadow archetypes. I am the love that requires nothing in return. I am the giver and sustainer of life. I seek not for return on my investment of love, for love is its own reward. I sustain my own life by nurturing the deep well of love within me. I have the strength to create life from my very being. I return to the abyss and am born anew again and again. This is my power. I cannot be destroyed. I am deeper than time, older than space. I am the cosmic container that contains all. What is greater than me? Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you for joining me for day 1. And who knows who we'll meet tomorrow? It's really up to the archetypes to decide. And I'm just so grateful I get to share this with you. Normally, this is the work that I share just with my Priestess Mystic Leaders students of the 3rd level. So it's beautiful to be able to bring it to you all, and really vital right now that we understand that our capacity to see with symbolic sight is, like all things, it's a skill that we can cultivate. And if we choose to do that, yeah, we inherit heaven on earth. There's nothing more blissful than being able to see beyond the illusion to truth. It's my life's work, and I'm so grateful for it. So much love to you all. Have a beautiful day.